I love sports, and the great thing about sports is highly visual. Like you can see it when it happens, it's cinematic. And then, yeah, like I always call it like, the anatomy of greatness. Like what are the elements? Like what comes together? And of course, the mechanics of greatness was really fascinating to me. Is like, it's the moment for sure, but it's the backstory and it's like the context in which greatness happens. So I think it was 2013-ish, 14, I started working with Kobe Bryant. I would get texts from him at like 3, 4 in the morning. So he had an intensity to him, but also a clarity, I think, that was just unique and different. It was so intense, it drove me and my team towards greatness. He wouldn't compromise. There was nothing he would, if it wasn't like perfect in his eyes, it wasn't good enough.
What is the defect that all these great people have?
So Kobe is the best example of this. Is like, he's not an easy guy to get along with. And like, there's a combativeness that really drove him. Kobe won 3 championships when literally it turns out he and Shaq were like having fistfights in practice. Meanwhile, like you hear the stories about Kobe, every time a new player they'd start a new season and there's a new guy on the team, he would go at them in practice and he would try to destroy them, right? And that was just his nature. That was his style, and it was tiring, but it was also like how he pushed you, is how he pushed himself. It was just better and better. Like I said, no compromise out of that guy. It's their ability to deal with that and fail and turn it around. So legendary stories, Kobe Bryant shooting 4 air balls in a playoff game. What does he do that night? He flies back and he goes to the Palisades High School gym and he shoots all night long. I also know like some of the other athletes, they don't want to be robotic. It's like you don't want to like be pre-programmed. Like you don't want things to feel choreographed, because then you get sort of stuck in that moment. So there's a fine line between preparation, but also then just letting go. And it's a balance, but you're talking about people who have kind of, these athletes remember the one that got away. It's the scar that never heals. Yes, is it failure? For sure, but it's your ability to rebound from failure and come back. And so I think like, is there vulnerability? Is there failure? For sure. It's that ability to like, use it and channel it into success that is unique. I think sports are unique because a lot of them are team sports, right? So no matter what kind of trauma or isolation you have in your past, part of being successful, at least in a team, is like connecting with other people. And that's in its own way restorative and healing. I think that's also a product of the times in some ways. It's hard to be isolated, I've been fortunate because I've kind of grown up around it. Like my dad is like
in spiritual healing.
Yeah. And he's famous. And I grew up around that fame. And so to me, it was like I got to see an inside. The thing about my father also is that pre his spiritual guru identity, he was far from that. Drank a lot, smoked a lot of weed, stuff like that. Like he had a very addictive personality and like had a lifestyle that was sort of like the opposite of what he's now known for. But his professional transformation, going from being a Western trained physician to like a healer or Eastern sort of spiritual teacher, etc., it was underlined by like a personal transformation. Like he kind of had a deep dissatisfaction in his life, and I lived through that. I watched it. I remember when I was probably 8 or 9 years old and my dad was still like, he would work all weekend, or he would work to the bone. He would come back, have 2 whiskeys or whatever, then pass out. And there were times like he fell out of bed and broke his nose. He was like so out of it. And like, so I remember that version of my dad way before like the one that started meditating and all that sort of stuff. So I remember that, like this person who you've seen as this moment of greatness, it's actually like they're a human being who's struggling with all these things. That makes it that much more admirable. I think for me, obviously a big transformational thing was like becoming a parent myself, because like suddenly like you see the world outside of yourself, and you start to become more comfortable with who you want to be and who you eventually become. And yeah, I definitely like, I'm around a lot of these people who are great, and it's like, man, like I want to be that. Like I need to have that sort of success. But then I remind myself again, like, well, just like everything you see, isn't as perfect as it always seems. One thing I've learned also is like, be present. Like, I'm not that person who thinks about like my 5-year plan. I'm very in the moment. One, I love surrounding myself with, other great thinkers and innovators, So I love like doing this. I want to do more stuff with you. I think I've been an artist for so long, like focused like on one project. Now I get to be in a position where I get to be with other people. I get to like, help other artists, like give them a platform. Through our company, we're sort of identifying a lot of people who are really gifted. They just don't have access. And now we can help provide that. What resources can we bring in so that we can help people? And you also look the times that we're living in. It's divisive, and the climate. It's like, how can we make a difference? How can we say something that matters and that helps us collectively heal?
So imagine this is your final day on this earth. What would you say are your 3 truths you would share with everyone?
One, don't take yourself too seriously. I think it's so easy to get caught up in the moment, but to have fun and take a step back and look at the big picture, I think that would be a big one for me. To spend your time wisely. I feel like now looking back, I'm like, oh man, I wasted a lot of time doing a lot of things that just seemed important at the time but weren't of consequence. And then I think probably most importantly, especially as a father, this is something I talk about with my son a lot, is like, be of service. Like, what are you gonna leave behind? What are you gonna contribute? How are you gonna be, how are you gonna move the ball forward? And it's not about having the nicest car or the biggest house or whatever. Nobody cares at the end. That's not the stuff you remember. It's about like, how was I of service to the world? And again, I think living in a time, this is even more appropriate than ever. Like, how can I make a difference? Did my life matter? And I think that will probably be in how I contributed, not like what material things did I accumulate. My life has always been a series of relationships. Like, every project I've ever worked on that's been successful has been the product of like a genuine relationship, that's built over time, like not having an agenda, and so I think just it's about communicating, engaging, and finding ways to collaborate.
So what's your definition of greatness?
Being present. And I think, look, greatness in sports is about incredible performances, but it's about being present in the moment. I'm one of those people who's constantly on social media and check my phone, and I remind myself all the time, especially like when I'm, with my son, or now I just got a new puppy, like, and, one of my favorite things is in the morning, I wake up around 5:30, and I take the puppy out, and I leave everything behind. I'm just like with him, and that playfulness and that just like, being present. I think greatness is sometimes 45, 15, and 9. Sometimes it's just about being in the moment.